Mental Health Monday
on Radio City Talk
with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.
It's Mental Health Monday for a Monday. My name's Mick Coyle. Welcome back to the programme. And we've got a really interesting show ahead for you today. We're going to have a conversation with a child and adolescent psychiatrist. We're going to hear about a new app which he has in fact created. Also, we're going to be having a conversation in regard to grief, coping with grief and issues that may arise from a mental health point of view if you're not dealing with grief through the proper channels and through the right way, whatever the right way is. We will find out on the programme. We'll talk about that as well. You can get it as part of a podcast and, of course, here on the live radio show on Radio City Talk. We've got Hassan Yasin in the studio today. Hassan, great to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You are a child and adolescent psychiatrist.
That's right.
And you're also now the creator and founder of the Moodit App.
Yep.
That's Moodit, Moodit.
That's correct.
We're going to hear all about the app and the work that you do. First and foremost, you're very passionate about mental health. In fact, that's your line of work now. Just tell us about child and adolescent psychiatry. How long have you been in training? How long were you in training before you became professional?
A good few years to train, because obviously you train as a doctor first and then go into child and adolescent psychiatry, or in psychiatry in general, then go into child and adolescent psychiatry. So it's been a good few years working in the field.
What was it that was sort of taking you down certain paths? Was it things that you were experiencing, things you enjoyed doing, things that you saw value in?
Yeah, I think it was more that I saw I could make a positive impact on people's lives and that I was quite good at it. Working with young people was very fulfilling, and changing people's trajectory that early on can make a big difference. So, someone that can come in with a certain set of difficulties and changing the trajectory just a couple of degrees can make a huge difference later on down the line. So making that impact early on can really change people's lives.
And for a lot of people, you are sort of the place to be. We hear many times on this programme about people who want to get access to a child psychologist, that they're on a waiting list, they're waiting to get into the system. Presumably when they sit down in a room to you have a large amount of dedication and time to them and to really get into the bottom of their issues and problems. Yeah,
I mean, it's obviously with anything to do with mental health, it's not a one-person show. It's a whole team behind getting someone on track. And obviously my role as a psychiatrist is one of many people in the team that also contribute to and work very, very hard to get people on track.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about sort of how you sort of go about your business, because I think it'll feed into then creating the app and how you see it. Because From a psychiatrist's point of view, I mean, you're not doing brain surgery, you're not doing heart surgery. You are talking, you are allowing to talk, you are making presumably suggestions as well. Which is interesting, actually, because from a mental health point of view, there might be people who are thinking, right, this person's going to fix me, this person is going to do the equivalent of brain surgery. How articulate are you in the way you ask questions and the way you open up things? How clinical a process do you think psychiatry is?
Psychiatry is definitely a very clinical process. There's a lot of training that goes into communication, asking the right questions, guiding people down the right path. But you're absolutely right. Where psychiatry and all mental health workers in general differ from other fields is that we really empower people to get themselves better and to take ownership of their mental wellness, rather than kind of present the solution and the quick fix. So some people that do come in expecting that we'll do all the work, it's probably a bit shocking to them that we ask them to actually undertake a lot of the work themselves.
I was going to say, do people ever say it's the equivalent of getting a build around and then providing you with a plan and some bricks, and then you go, well, there you go. Build it.
I mean, there is, that could be a pretty good analogy. Getting a build around and giving them bricks, but we probably do a little building as well. So it's kind of a cooperation.
So presumably when you were doing things, you were spending a period of time with people. I don't know, about an hour would it be, an hour and a half that you would spend on a session with somebody?
Yeah, typically they last about an hour, and in that time you would assess. It depends whether how long you've built that rapport up with the patient, how often you see them, and what it is you have to talk about. But typically sessions are about an hour long.
And then you would have either a regular session with them, or you would go and signpost things that they could look at, read out, talk about, and things, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So, depending on what we do as within the psychiatry team, there will be people that need follow-up on a regular basis, but we also, within the teams, will have case managers that also, are involved in the cases. With anyone's mental well-being, it's not kind of a one-track situation. So you'll have nurses, there'll be social workers. There's really a kind of very wide multidisciplinary approach to getting someone on track.
And all the while, Hassan, that had been going on, this digital world was starting to creep up on everybody. And
Absolutely.
At some point you thought, maybe there's something in this beyond a little bit of a gimmick to actually help people out. And you set about creating the app. What was the idea behind the app before you started creating it?
Well, so where it all started was obviously working with young people. At the time that the idea was kind of formulated, I was working in an inpatient unit. And one of the struggles that I saw repeatedly was expressing mental distress was very, very difficult to do verbally. And I wanted to create a system that allowed people to express how they felt in the most easy and straightforward way possible. And not necessarily only mental distress, but anything at all, really, any emotion, any feeling that someone had. And where we all are these days is on our phones and online. And so I thought that there must be a way to create something that allows people to express how they feel, but also to get something back from that, rather than just it being kind of an offloading space. Maybe actually give something back to people as they do upload how they feel.
I mean, the world is a complicated place. People have complicated lives. People have complicated feelings. I know you're big on sort of mental wellness.
Yep.
Did you get a sense that actually all those thoughts and processes and ideas and people might have about themselves and their situation, you could condense it down into something which could be a tap on a smartphone? Or have you thought, well, this covers one element of it and might signpost to something else elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think in very specific illnesses and specific situations, there will need to be specialist input that targets a modality of therapy, or something very specific to someone's needs. But in general, my belief is that mental wellness is something that we should all be undertaking every day. So it's not kind of, my analogy always is that with physical health, when we talk about it, we don't kind of say, well, eat what you want, never sleep, drink anything you like, and then if you have a heart attack, then we can see a cardiologist. But for some reason with our mental health, that's kind of what we do. We go, well, we don't have to think about it, we don't have to address it, we don't have to do anything with it. And if it does go wrong, well, we've got psychiatrists and psychologists that can step in. So I wanted to change that a little bit and kind of make mental health something that we all participate in every day, in the same way you might go for a run to get physically well. So there are things that you should do to stay mentally well. And part of that, or one of the biggest elements of that in my belief, is starting to understand what your thoughts are, where they come from, and what you feel as a result. And if you can do that, and if you practice that every day, then things get less overwhelming when they get tricky. And it's about having that kind of in your locker and practicing those techniques on a day-by-day basis.
So if people get the Moodit app, we'll point people in the direction of it a little bit later on.
It's out soon. It's not right out yet, but it's out soon. Yeah.
Well, pre-orders.
Yeah.
What will it look like? What will you see?
So the app will allow you to share how you feel in a really, really simple way. First, it's on a colour spectrum, so red, yellow, green, like a traffic light, so that you can just... that's the simplest form that we could kind of make it so that people could understand intuitively: red negative, green positive, and yellow somewhere in the middle. And then you can attach to that words, pictures, GIFs, whatever you want to do to add context to how you feel. And then what the app will do is it will understand what you feel and why, and it will tell you how many people feel similar to you. So you actually can get a sense of, because when things do feel difficult, it can feel like a very lonely place. And so hopefully the app is going to tell you that actually there are people all around the world that feel similar to you. And then we've coined a term, mood hacks.
Now I like this.
Yeah.
Explain what a mood hack is.
So a mood hack is a practical thing that you can do that improves your mood. And so what we're doing is asking people to upload their mood hacks onto Moodit as well. And depending on the mood that you're in, you will also be faced in your mood feed. You'll be presented with mood hacks appropriate to how you feel. So that will be, we're kind of crowdsourcing positivity, I guess, getting people all over the world to put in things that they've done that have worked for them. If someone's felt stressed, they can upload what they've done to alleviate their stress, and hopefully create a system where people all over the world share ways to feel better.
And that might be go out for a jog, try knitting.
Absolutely. It could be anything.
Laughter therapy.
It could be anything at all. And that's really the whole point, is that the road to mental wellness isn't this one thing. I think it's about really learning and understanding that there are loads of different ways to be mentally well. And if we can kind of tap into that, which is something that isn't really done in the world of social media at the moment. So we'd like to really source people's experiences with creating a pathway to wellness.
Do you think there might be people, though, who might have issues and they might be going, right, well, I'm in a red mood today and I'm using Moodit. If you're in a green mood, actually you're feeling all right, is there not a chance that actually people wouldn't use it? And maybe you wouldn't get a full sense of maybe people's wellness when they were feeling good. Because we have this thing where you don't go to the doctor if you're feeling well. And we maybe don't engage with mental health if we've got no issue with it.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. But the idea really is that identifying how you feel and identifying your thoughts is part of the whole process. So the encouragement will be to continuously share how you feel, regardless of whether it's good or bad. But even when it is good, you'll still get the feedback from the app about people that feel similar. So, if Liverpool win, and you'll get to see how many people are sharing that kind of positive emotion with you. And you'll be able to kind of connect with people in that way. So I'm hopeful that people will use it both ways. Obviously at the moment with the social media, people only share the good things. So I'm hopeful that we don't have a complete opposite effect with Moodit, and we actually get more of a balance.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation about social media because it's a tightrope that many people tread. I think it's a really interesting idea, and actually that idea as well about sort of sharing the sort of the ideas that you might have, things that you do, is part of this idea that there is a community out there, and a community based a lot on goodwill and people going, well, actually I was in this situation but I found that this worked. And actually that's something which is very different to the work of a psychiatrist and the clinical side of things. That's about socialness, that's about connectivity and togetherness.
And I think that's what we've always done as humans until very recently, is that we would have a social network of people around us that we'd turn to when we needed advice or when we needed to feel better. The issue that we have now is that although we're the most connected we've ever been, we're also quite isolated in many ways. And so creating that kind of pathway to be able to reach out to people and get wisdoms from people from around the world could be quite useful, I hope.
It sounds like your app is going to be the equivalent of what do you call these things you have on your watch where you count your steps?
Yeah, like a Fitbit.
That's what I was thinking. And people on social media, Facebook-wise, go, I've done 15,000 steps today, or I've done 15 miles of marathon training, and it comes up on your social media feed. Yeah,
we're very hopeful. I mean, that's the aim really, is that it is I guess an exercise app for mental wellness. So it is promoting the idea that the more that you use it, the better hopefully you'll understand yourself, and the better you'll be able to deal with different life situations, and get support in doing that from people that have been there and done it before you have.
What will it do in terms of signposting that might flag up things where people might go, well, Liverpool won, so X number of thousand people, both here and in Norway, are having a great time. But that was a dig there. But on the reverse side, if you feel a certain way and there's only a couple of other people who feel that way, people might go, oh, this is obviously something that maybe needs looking into. How does it then signpost into different directions?
Yeah, so it's going to be very unlikely that there's only a few people in the world that have, that would be, I think then we probably should signpost them to kind of some journals or something to run a study. But the aim of the app is certainly not to be medical. So it's not a medical app. It's for everyone to use. So it's not necessarily for anyone that has pre-existing condition. I mean, that would hopefully will benefit too, but that's not who it's targeting specifically. There will be a safe mode that we're developing, which is a mode that people can access when they do have difficult thoughts. So at the point that they have difficult thoughts or a distressing moment in their mental wellness, and they don't really want to have kind of feeds and people that they're following and seeing how other people feel, safe mode is going to provide them with practical steps that they can take to avoid doing anything that they'll regret later, and hopefully signpost them to local numbers or to alert their emergency contacts about the fact that they're having a bit of a difficult situation. So it's a mode that we're using, that people will be able to activate within Moodit, that hopefully will allow people to have practical steps they can take to avoid harming themselves or dealing with a very distressing moment.
This is obviously, you're a child and adolescent psychiatrist. Obviously, young people and their, social media and their app use. Is there anything that's in there which is particular to young people? Do young people get a different experience from it? And obviously, there's the protection that's required towards them. How does that and how have you found a balance with that?
Yeah, it's difficult because obviously what we do want to target young people, but not kind of children per se. So teenagers, and we're trying to put in the same measures as most of the other social media kind of applications do in regards to reporting inappropriate content, and we're trying to build algorithms that can detect content that would be inappropriate or risky to have on the site. So it is something we're actively working on to try and put those safeguards in place inside the app.
Absolutely. We've got Hassan Yasin. Moodit is the name of the app. It's in its sort of final stages now.
Yeah, hopefully the app will be in the apps in iOS sometime in May, and hopefully on Android not too long after that. But at the moment, it's going to be an iOS app out in May.
When people always say about these apps in development, I always remember these little zeros and ones and on a workshop.
It's exactly what it's like.
People are just trying to piece them all together.
That's there. We got lots of glue and zeros and ones.
Social media is such a complex thing that they're into, Hassan. Now, I don't want you to talk about specifics of cases, but when you speak to young people, how much of an issue is social media in their mind?
It's a very big issue nowadays. Yeah, and I guess it's hard to speak about specific cases, as you say, but it's a theme that we're seeing very, very often. And there are lots of themes that we can extrapolate from it, but social media has, it's a double-edged sword, really. On the one hand, it's provided us with access and connectivity in a way that we've never experienced before in human history. But in another way, we're kind of in the middle of an experiment as well, because we don't really know how people are responding or will respond to it, and this is the first generation now that have been born in a world that exists with social media. Beforehand there's still kind of a balance of people that could see a before and after, and now we're seeing a generation that has known nothing different, and that does come with its problems. So social media, as I say, connects people in an incredible way, but it also means that people are constantly fearful of missing out on the next thing. And so perpetually people are scrolling and never really actually being present in anything. And this can create a real difficulty in learning to be present in the moment and enjoying anything, because and it creates a big sense of anxiety in young people as well, because for perpetually, as I'm scrolling through my media feed, as I'm enjoying one interaction with somebody, I'm already got my eye on something else. It's kind of an analogy I make is if you go to a restaurant and there's a conveyor belt of every type of food imaginable, and it's just kind of, you take your pick. You might pick up a burger and take a bite, but as you kind of take the bite from the burger, you might see a curry that also looks good. So you put the burger down and you want to have a bit of the curry, and you enjoy neither. You can't actually present and enjoy a meal because you're perpetually looking at the next thing and the next thing. So it does create that kind of sense that and an agitation and anxiety that I'm missing out on something. And the other thing, of course, that it does is it creates a lot of feelings of inadequacy in young people now. One of the ills of social media is that everyone presents the very coolest photos and the very best of themselves a lot of the time. And what that does is it creates a sense that people have got it figured out. So if you were to go on various people's social media feeds, you'd think this person's got it all figured out. They know where they're going in life, where they've come from, what to do, and it's all fine. And of course, the reality is that none of us have anything really figured out. Yeah.
But I always think the opposite of that, though. You would never put on, in the same way, like, I would never put up photos of me facing the wrong way in the camera, or where I've got a huge spot on the end of my nose. They're not the photos which I would put up in a picture in my home. You present a certain way. If your great grandma's coming around for tea, you get out the best crockery, don't you?
Sure.
Because you want to make it an impression. And I often think that sometimes with social media, it's not about what you put up there. It's about how we as individuals are sort of trained to understand the reality of what that is.
Yeah, you're right. And I think making a good impression is fine. So if someone were to come around to your house and that you wanted to get the best crockery out and make the best impression, that's absolutely fine. But if they were moving in with you and you had a series of people coming in every single day, and the only thing you could do was make that great impression, you'd get a bit lost in who you really were after a little while, wouldn't you? Because the point would be that the real you would get lost in trying to present this very superficial and perfect image of you. And I guess that's what happens in social media a lot, is that people do feel the need to only present this side of themselves. And that would be fine if it was something that we use periodically. But if it's something that, we use every single day, and we take it home with us, first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is check our notifications. Last thing we do before we go to bed is make sure that we haven't missed anything. There are studies now that show that people wake up in the middle of the night to check their social media feeds, just in case they miss out on anything. So it's something that, we're perpetually presenting and, kind of ingesting from the world. And I think finding a balance of how to do that is going to be really important.
Just for the record, I'm not really looking for any roommates, and also I don't have any best crockery.
You don't?
No,
okay.
just the standard crockery.
Just standard, and it comes out with whoever visits.
That's that's democracy now. It don't matter who you are.
Fair enough.
Everybody gets the same plates.
Okay, good.
It's about equality. I've got some posh cutlery though.
When does that come out?
Well, it's not been out for about 3 years, so
okay. So no one important's come around for a while. Is that what we should?
I became a parent 3 years ago,
okay.
So keep all your
Understood.
nice stuff tucked away.
Yep,
that's the rule.
Understood.
You've obviously created the app now, so you're delving into that world. Yep. Are you aware with the app about how often people might touch it? Are you? And I wonder whether or not this is part of the issue that app developers are thinking, well, every time they check, we need to be able to offer something different. Are people going to be able to get different responses to different things that they post through Moodit?
Yeah, I hope so. But the importance is that one of the things that we're very focused on is trying to get people to start understanding themselves. So what I don't want to do is just feed into the perpetual feeling of next, what's next, because in doing so we're kind of missing the point. Because what I want people to start doing is learning to be a little bit present and learning to actually understand what it is that they're feeling and why they're feeling it, rather than relying on this perpetual kind of conveyor belt of things to process.
I've never understood. Well, I have, because it's capitalism. Why is an app, or there isn't an app, which will basically just deactivate your account for a brief period of time? So, like right now, I couldn't care less what's on my Facebook post. I couldn't. I'm not interested. I don't want to. So actually, quite now, I would go, you know what? For the next 12 hours, don't let me on Facebook, because I don't want to see it. So I can make that a reasoned judgment. But of course, what will happen after we finish our conversation? You'll post that selfie. I'll like it, and then I'll start looking. I'll wait for the notifications to come down. And it's same with Twitter and Instagram. If you just had a thing where you could just go, you know what? Next 24 hours. It's just going to be about me and the family, or, I've got a big day coming. I'm going to a wedding and I don't want to be doing any social media. You should just be able to opt out in the same way that if you're a gambler, you can contact gambling companies and say, right, do not let me gamble on this account.
I think you're absolutely right. And this is kind of part of the experiment that we're in, is that, we're only just finding out now the very serious ill effects that social media can have on people's lives, as well as the positive effects. So there are calls for social media companies to take ownership and take responsibility for that, especially when it comes to young people. So, having very set limitations on when young people can access social media, and also even what they can do with social media, I think is important. And I think you're right that there should be a way that people can kind of zone out for a while, turn off their devices, or not be kind of accessing social media. Of course, everyone can. The fact of the matter is that we do have choices that we can make to, kind of delete the app for a while. The content will still be there when you reinstall it, but we do have choices that we can make. And I think there's someone I was speaking to a little earlier today who said that actually some of the social media companies should maybe issue warnings that come with the app that say, excessive use of this can be detrimental to your mental health, in the same way that I guess there are warnings on food and cigarettes and other things. I think an excess of anything can be detrimental, and obviously this is more difficult to measure because it's a detriment to people's mental well-being, rather than something that you can measure in numbers or figures. So I think you're absolutely right. I do think that's where things are going to end up going, because we do as a society have to be able to reconnect with each other in a real way, and in doing to do that we have to kind of limit the time that we use on our phones.
Sometimes people go, oh, social media, it's terrible. It must be modern technology. It must be young people. We've created a generation, a digital generation, and we've not equipped them for it. Is that sometimes a cop-out response, that actually there are complex things that have always been going on in young people's lives that we need to make sure that young people, Facebook or not, are equipped to deal with things that come out with them digitally or not?
Yeah, of course. I think that it's an overgeneralization to say that we've created suddenly a generation that are dealing with problems that have never been dealt with before. What social media can do is it can exacerbate certain problems, and can potentially provide solutions to other problems. So it's not really a black and white thing. So, for example, taking the issue of bullying, it can be exacerbated by social media, because where someone was bullied before, they could go home and in the house there'd be a safe space. With social media, that safe space doesn't exist anymore. People can be bullied in their own bedrooms. So it can create a problem. But where in other ways, now with social media, people can access groups and things that they're interested in that maybe they couldn't before, and could find out about, find information that they never could before as well. So it's not really a black and white thing, and there are issues that young people have dealt with since the dawn of time and will continue to deal with. So I think social media in its own right isn't the problem. It's just that it's a tool that we need to know how to use.
When Moodit's up and running, is that something which you would expect people to use on a daily basis? Something they would do at a given time in a day, or check a couple of times during the day?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be different for different people. Ideally, the process of mental wellness, whether it's Moodit or any other way, is to spend time every single day trying to understand your thought processes, trying to understand where feelings have come from. Because usually we only notice our thoughts when they kind of are distressing, and it can feel like they've come from nowhere. In reality, most of the time, there's been a series of events and a series of thoughts that have led to kind of the distressing thought. And so spending time every day just alone, trying to figure out and listen to your thoughts, and figure out where the emotions have come from, is really, really helpful. So I'm hopeful that some people might end up using it every day or once every so often. Some people might use it more than once a day. Really, the idea is to train yourself to start identifying how you feel, and in doing so, things won't feel as random and out of control.
Thank you for your time, Hassan. Really look forward to sort of playing around with the app when it arrives. Just remind us when it's going to be appearing and where.
Hopefully in the middle of May on iOS App Store.
Brilliant stuff. And we'll check it out then. When it's up on Android and all that, we'll get it up on our social media.
Fantastic.
So, Hassan Yasin, the child and adolescent psychiatrist and the creator and founder of the Moodit App. You're with Radio City Talk.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
Okay, so it's Radio City Talk. It's Mental Health Monday. My name's Mick Coyle. I'm very pleased to say we're going to have a conversation now about grief. Now, grief is something we've touched on many times as part of Mental Health Monday, but I wanted to sort of get into it because there's the results out as a result of a new survey about how we feel in regard to grief, sadness after the loss of a loved one, and maybe the differences in between. First up, we've got Julia Samuel with us, author and psychotherapist who specialises in grief. Julia, thank you for your time. Thanks for speaking to us on the programme.
It's a pleasure to be here.
What do we mean by grief outside, the differences, if you like, between grief and sadness?
Well, grief is the response to a death of someone that you love, and it's the process of adapting to your life without the person that's alive. And pain is the agent of change. So it's by allowing yourself to feel the pain and having support through the pain that allows you then to re-engage and live and love again in your life. But it's a long old process, much longer than anybody wants or wishes.
This sounds like an odd question maybe, but is grief a good thing?
We don't have a choice, because if we shut down on our grief, the things that we do to avoid the pain and the grief do us much more harm than the grief itself. Research shows that 15% of all psychological disorders come from unresolved grief, from the behaviours people have developed to block it. So as much as no one wants to feel the pain and no one wants to be grieving, it is the best route to being healthy and mentally well.
When we talk about mental health on the programme, we talk about the fact that everybody's got mental health and, it's something that you can manage. Is that something that you're increasingly aware of with your own line of work, that sometimes people get to the good things and it's great, but when they get to the bad things, they try and shut that out, find alternative ways of dealing with something, when actually, if we were better sort of equipped, if you like, to deal with mental health issues, then grief would be something which, although we wouldn't enjoy, we could sort of embrace a little bit more.
I think it's absolutely right. So that's why it's important research like this from the Co-op is letting people know that this has a big impact on you. If you don't have an understanding of what is normal in grief, you'll somehow think that you're failing and you'll feel under pressure to go back to work too soon. And then you might have the knock-on effect of a mental illness.
Absolutely.
And it's our attitude, isn't it? It's our perception that if we kind of recognise that life it isn't always about kind of feeling good and being happy, but how you weather the storms, how you manage the difficulty is how you live with mental health.
So the Co-op Funeral Care Survey found that over half of British adults felt pressured to return to work after the death of a loved one. 4 in 10 Brits felt isolated at work while dealing with grief, while 46% of people felt that they were avoided by others out of fear of saying the wrong thing. This falls in line with this idea that we just don't sort of embrace this sort of mental health aspect at all at the moment. There are people who are feeling in a certain way, then people who aren't feeling the grief, but then don't know how to speak to the person who is feeling the grief. We're not educated enough to be able to have those conversations.
Absolutely. You've described the kind of negative cycle perfectly. And thanks to people like you having these shows, we raise awareness that sometimes people have a kind of magical thinking. If I talk about death and grief, somehow I might make it happen. Whereas if I pretend it isn't going to happen, it won't happen to me. And actually the reverse is true, is that if we kind of really recognise that all of us are at some time in our life going to experience grief, and the more we understand ourselves, the process of it, how to be supported and how to support others, the better we will do. One
of the sort of ongoing tragedies is sort of highlighted by the results of this survey. There's the tragedy that creates the grief in the first place, but then the conflict that comes within families as a result of that. 37% of people found that relationships within their family were affected by different ways of grieving, that, issues kick up, that further ongoing problems sort of start to emerge because of the way we grieve or don't grieve or talk about grieving or not. That's quite upsetting, isn't it? Because there's already a tragedy within the household. Yeah. We don't need any other problems.
Yes, so pre-existing fault lines will erupt in difficult circumstances. And so when again, it all comes down to this lack of awareness and inability to communicate, where we need to recognise that there isn't a right way or wrong way to grieve. And often in particular, men and women grieve very differently, and that can cause real conflict. But also we feel powerless, and I think some of the conflicts that happen in family systems is where people are trying to sort of assert their power because they feel so powerless. And that can cause massive conflicts that actually never get resolved. And so, as you say, it's a double tragedy. There's the death of the person that they all love, and then it can cause the end of significant relationships.
Absolutely. And the way that people sort of react in these situations is so telling, I think. But also, maybe armed with a little bit of this information, it might help us. For instance, the loneliest time of day was at bedtime for more than a fifth of Brits, while Sunday was found to be the loneliest day of the week while grieving. Now, that's quite something, isn't it? That there are specific moments that actually those trigger moments of grief can really kick in. And maybe that's something that friends, family members might be able to sort of clue themselves up on a little bit.
And I think they're significant times because it shows that this connection to others that supports us. Those times of going to bed or Sundays are the ones where you're the least busy, so your feelings emerge most powerfully. And developing close relationships with other people who'll come and see you on a Sunday, but also ways of calming yourself and supporting yourself before you go to bed is really important, so that, at those moments you don't feel worse.
What do you make of the survey, the stat within the survey, rather, that suggests that it's almost twice as many women find it harder to sleep at night than men? Of course, lack of sleep creates its own issues, doesn't it? But actually, why do you think that seems to be something which is framed within the female gender as opposed to the male, 43% versus 26%?
I think it's to do with how women grieve, that they become very preoccupied with the person that's died, and they have this kind of Sherlock Holmes investigative circular thinking that goes round and round, looking for every piece of the jigsaw that's missing, thinking about the relationship and the things they wish they'd said. And men tend to be more active. Men tend to want to get on with life and not go back and kind of rewind what happened in the same way. I mean, you can get men like women, but I think this stat bears that out. And you very much see that in my book, Grief Works, how different people grieve in different ways. And it isn't about changing who you are, but meeting the person that you are and supporting the person that you are effectively.
Can I ask you about funerals? And the importance or lack thereof of funerals. I've often found within our own family environments that actually I don't look forward to the funeral at all, and then I find that actually once the funeral is done, there is a cathartic sense that comes from it, and then the conversation starts again, and the sort of the happy memories start to come forward in regard to a particular person. And yet for a lot of people, funerals are absolutely something to avoid, to keep away from. They're too tragic an event to sort of have to comprehend and deal with.
Yeah, and I think that's because I think if I don't see something, it's going to make me feel better.
Sure.
But actually, we need physical rituals and ways of being together that help us acknowledge the death of the person that's died. And the funeral, like organised by the Co-op who did this research, is incredibly important. All the decisions and the choices that they make, who comes, what is read, how the person is buried. Because if they do it too quickly or without proper support and information, they regret it. And the biggest kind of derailer of grief is regrets, things that you wished you'd said or done or organised. So it's an incredibly important part of the process that lives in the person for forever after the person has died.
Are there things that people speak to you about, Julia, when they sit down and they say, I've got grief and it relates to something which happened to me months, years, decades ago, unresolved matters? Is there a particular thing which we should be embracing as a society, as a group of friends, as a family, that when terrible things happen, we need to embrace a certain thing? Because it means that down the line, we're not then faced with the ongoing issues that might come with grief, the mental health issues that might emerge as a result of that.
I do think it is having those important conversations. I mean, firstly, acknowledging that you love the person. I think that's probably the single biggest regret, that people haven't said enough. I wish I'd said I'd love them. I wish I'd said how important they were. But also having those conversations way before death is likely to happen, so that if it does suddenly happen, or it happens in old age, which is obviously more likely, that they know what the person wants, whether they're going to be buried or cremated, who they want for the funeral, because it's often those unanswered questions that cause conflict between the family members. So it's having many more conversations about how they feel about each other and how they feel about death and dying. And that takes the fear away. It doesn't intensify it. It lessens it.
Let's bring a funeral director onto the programme, David Collingwood, with us as well, Director of Funerals at Co-op Funeral Care, who carried out this survey. David, I guess you must see, in terms of the line of work that you do, that the sort of things that Julia was talking about there, those conversations that take place to make sure that the event is a suitable event, if you like, for the marking of somebody's life, but also that allows a family to come together and share that grief together in a way which hopefully will put them on a better path for the future.
Definitely. I think we're all unique people, no matter who we are, and I think it's very important that the funeral, represents that, from, being a very simple affair to something that perhaps be a little bit more ornate. A funeral should reflect the life of a person, and, as a funeral director, we should be helping a family, organise that through giving them choices, understanding where their head is really in terms of grief, this sort of cognitive grief that actually affects people, which limits their normal sort of choices and judgments, quite a natural thing. And, we need to be aware of that to be able to take families through those choices and help them organise something that actually reflects the life of a person, and recognise that everybody focuses on the funeral immediately after death, and there's this big thing, get the funeral over with, get on with things. And actually probably the funeral is the first stage of actually physically, saying goodbye to a person, a physical element of that person, but actually then learning then to cope with and deal with the bereavement. And as a family unit, how best can we do that? Is there any, a birthday that we could mark? How can we ensure that, we preserve the memory of that person and are able to talk about them afterwards.
Yeah, and I guess that you must see as well when you sit down with individuals and families that a sense that they're not ready to give up on that particular person, that memory, that grief isn't ready for them now. And I guess you must see that all the time where you're trying to do the right thing because there's legalities around these sorts of things as well, but they've got their own ongoing processes, their own mindset that they're dealing with too.
They have, and I think having an understanding of, of grief and bereavement and actually how that process can affect people helps in being able to offer those choices and help that family. We're not there to take over, we're there to help people plan the right funeral for a person. And that's really then, that opportunity after the funeral to share memories and to talk about the person that's passed away, and to know that things have been done in the way that, a family would want them to be done. That's the satisfaction. We're kind of like grief paramedics, for want of a better phrase. We're in there right at the start. We're in there to splint the bone and stop the bleeding and help somebody, but then they go on to then cope with their bereavement and cope and start to learn to live with it. It's never something you get over. You learn to live with it.
Absolutely. David, thank you for your time today. Julia Samuel, thank you for your time too. Julia, you mentioned your book there. Just remind us again if people want to find out some more information about the work you've been doing on that.
It's called Grief Works, and I have a website, griefworks.co.uk.
And we really appreciate you both appearing on Mental Health Monday. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
On Radio City Talk.